Okay, we have 6 o'clock. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Benton City Council meeting special workshop. And this is the June 12th meeting. Before we get into this items for discussion, I would like to have the approval of the, first I want to have the roll call.
Councilwoman Wadsworth. Here. Councilman Quindretto. Councilman Reed.
Here.
Councilwoman Funk.
Here.
Councilwoman Alcazar.
Here.
I make a motion to excuse Dave Sandretto from tonight's meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Wadsworth, aye.
Reed, aye.
Dunk, aye. Alcazar, aye.
Okay, the next item would be the Pledge of Allegiance. And I think I'll ask our new engineer to do this and that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
Justice for all. Okay, then we will move with the approval of the agenda. And I do have an item to add. And that is the SCJ contract. And is that for discussion or is that for approval? Does anyone know?
For approval, I believe.
Okay, so that will be item F4.
Margaret, you might want to mute yourself.
Yeah,
Madam Mayor, do we have a copy of that agreement?
I just got back in town this morning. I haven't seen anything, so.
If it wasn't on the agenda?
It would have been on last week's. I don't have an agreement from SCJ for the intro.
Okay,
It's what you requested to have put on.
so
So
has it been noticed to the public? Was it noticed to the public in last Tuesdays? This is a first reading, or like what is it that we're being asked to approve, and was it
I think
published?
we should have a discussion item on this tonight rather than.
Rather than approval.
Great.
Than approval. If we don't have a contract, we can't.
And if it wasn't public, yeah. Mhm.
So we'll move that from approval F to discussion. And that will be I'm assuming under D. D1.
And I guess for clarification, it was on last week's meeting. Council requested additional information, which we gave them. And in last week's packet, it was the addendum number 1 to the personal services agreement on call planning services. And it's for a resolution to be entered on it.
Mayor Lehman.
Yes.
Hi, this is Brandon Mossa with SCJ Alliance, and I don't know if it's appropriate or if I can interject information of where this is at, or
No, not at the moment. We will get to it during the discussion.
thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to request that we have an executive session related to potential litigation prior to talking about additional staff.
Okay.
I don't know what the RCW would be for potential litigation with staff.
RCW 4230-110 one small I, Romanet I.
Thank you.
Okay, so, I'll, taking a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second,
Okay, all in favor, please.
Wadsworth, I.
Great eye.
Funk eye. Okay, sorry.
Does that everyone? Okay. Okay. All right, I think, Mr. Rainey, you have the floor for now.
Okay. I mean, we're trying to get my a computer set up that I was planning on mine working, but it didn't.
Okay,
So take me a second here. And then JB, can you make me go so I can share? Thank you. Am I up there?
You are.
Oh. Um.
There you go.
Are you seeing me or are you seeing the?
This,
Click your Zoom plus twice.
Right here?
There you go. Perfect.
All right. Cool. So tonight we're kind of catching up on some of the projects. And the first one is the riverfront or the railroad bridge. And so I did go through that a little bit at the council meeting, where the inspection of the bridge structure was good. And so now we're looking at getting the underwater inspection completed. I've been in contact with them. And I'm waiting to hear back, but the river looks favorable right now for the in-water inspection. So they are working on their schedule, trying to get over here, I think in the next couple of weeks. And so once we get that inspection, if it's favorable, then we'd be looking for the council to start moving forward with a green to use the I guess it's a grant, is it not, from
Federal appropriation.
federal appropriation? Yeah, so to agree to that, and then we start moving forward with HUD on more of their paperwork. And then we'd also start working on the NEPA review. So that will be coming up. And I did have a fairly lengthy discussion with the environmental engineer. All right, I don't know if he's an engineer, but he's an environmental specialist with HUD who would be reviewing this. And we went over quite a bit of information. He doesn't see it being insurmountable. He says there's a few things we got to do, but it's not going to be real tough. He didn't think. So. Any other questions on that one before I move on? Yeah. And then I'm going to be talking about Archie Borden Park, which is in the center of the screen. It's where the skate park is, tennis courts. And so the tennis court's been closed approximately 5 years. That's mainly due to the car running through the fence and taking out the nets and the structures there. And in 2021, RCO did an inspection on the courts, and they said because the courts were placed or constructed with an RCO grant, that area had to stay open. So we're technically not meeting the requirements of the original grant. And so we need to try to get that space back and open. It doesn't have to be a tennis court necessarily, but the space just has to be open for public use. And RCO now has a grant that opens for applications June 30th and closes on July 31st of this year. And it's a maintenance grant for a minimum of $50,000 and up to $100,000. And so Nathan and I have been I've been out on the site, and there's some photos here that you can see. You can see the fence, still the fence is still damaged there. But then you can look at the cracks in the tennis courts. And years ago, we were concerned about differential settlement because some of the materials below the tennis court were just junk concrete and probably asphalt just piled in there and then backfilled over the top. But as we looked at these, the cracks on each side of it, there's no difference in elevation. So it's just basically an expansion crack. And we talked with City of Richland and Richland School District, and they just did a resurfacing project, and they had the exact same thing going on with the asphalt surfacing. And they just took in basically a caulk material, if you will, and just filled the cracks and then just resurfaced over that. And I believe that was last fall that they did that. Their cracks are already showing up again in the resurfacing. Yeah. But they were explaining they had to do it because they had tournaments scheduled this spring. So they spent the money to do that. But what they plan to do is tear out the asphalt and then put a concrete pad down and then resurface with that. We also looked at other schools that had the asphalt surfacing or the base surface, and they were cracking the same as what we have. And so I don't know if he was an engineer, but kind of the head of facilities and maintenance, he was saying that he would never put anything, do a tennis court with asphalt again, because your life expectancy is 10 years or less. So that being said, you can see in the corner, we have some drainage issues that we have to deal with. We get runoff that comes out the northeast corner, and it undercuts and causes settlement. And there you see the condition of the asphalt. So at this point, and this is the inspection that was done. So I guess want to see, I think our plans were to possibly apply for the maintenance, redo the fence, and either we can saw cut out the asphalt and patch back asphalt, or do the filler kind of caulking, if you will. But we understand we're not going to have a perfect surface. And we've discussed putting in little soccer fields
Mhm.
and possibly basketball hoops there.
But the work still needs to be done, especially where it's sloughing off in the corner. And
Yes.
it's still a liability and the fence kind of being jagged out and.
Right, right. And I think if we had like a basketball court, you know, if we, I think if we saw cut and put asphalt in, it's gonna last longer than what we've seen at Richland where they use this caulking material. And then just try to do some kind of surface repair. Not redo the whole surface that was used for a tennis court, that type of material. And just kind of patch it in and then, you know, turn it over for basketball or soccer.
And not
The-
use it as a tennis court or use it as something else.
Yeah, use it as something else. That way, I think, to me, like playing tennis, it's more critical on the surface than basketball or soccer or something. And that's our recommendation to move forward with something like that. And with that, we would cut out the post footings that were used for the tennis. So you wouldn't have a little piece of metal in the middle of the court or the plate area. And so I guess we'd be looking for direction from you guys, if that's what you would want us to do, is apply for that maintenance grant.
I think that's a good start. My curiosity would be if price wise, like, let's say they gave us, or we got $75,000, I guess is like, what's how far can we spread that out and what can we do with something? You know, so that would be my next question is whatever we get out of it is what can we, I guess would be our next moves is what can we actually do with it?
Right.
You know, dream would be rip it down and start all over again and give something amazing, but $100,000 doesn't go that far anymore.
Correct. And I don't know if putting in new basketball hoops would be considered maintenance. So that's something we have to clarify with RCO.
Makes.
I think it would be nice if we could turn it into basketball hoops. I mean, obviously, eventually we'd like to find an area that we can do tennis courts for the community and where they can. I know the school's open, but
Right,
sometimes that's not always available when. people
Right,
need to use
right.
it.
and I know a lot of communities also have gone to pickleball courts.
Yep.
And but there again, I'm not sure, you know, for the community here, what would be the most widely used, I guess. And I think, you know, having a small soccer court, then I think they do 3-on-3 or 5-on-5. And there's been several people that have indicated there's an outfit that looks for places to host tournaments. And it's all the way from, you know, middle school kids all the way up to adults. And I guess they have quite a fair turnout for these tournaments.
And I remember when the car went through and was doing cookies in the tennis court, was there anything that the city did to pursue action against that individual for tearing up the tennis courts? Was there
I don't recall.
insurance or anything like that?
Thank you. That was one of my questions. I would be curious to see like maybe what the community thinks. Would they prefer basketball or would they prefer a pickleball option? I keep hearing pickleball. I don't know a whole lot of what it is. I just
Right.
Googled it. But I know that's the big thing now. And so I don't know, maybe if we gave them an opportunity to vote.
I think it was probably finding out what we actually can do with this area with
Mhm.
the money. I mean, I don't want to say, yes, let's bring it to the public and then decide on something and then say, well, that doesn't qualify for
Right.
Right.
your grant.
But if we find out that it could have options, maybe, yeah.
So it sounds like we need to do some sequencing before the grant opens. To see
Right.
what we'd be able to even.
Right.
I would say still apply for it, even if they come back and say you have to strictly keep it as a tennis court, then we'll know that that's our path forward and we'll use that money to
Okay.
get the tennis court.
I recall when we met with the Richland School District, the repairs that they did, he mentioned, I don't know if you remember, Alan, about $60,000 is what they spent in repairs.
Okay,
But that court was double the size of the one that we have. So, and that was just to.
We might get a
again,
good bang for a buck, right?
to repair it. We have reached out to the company that they use, but we haven't really gotten much of a response yet.
okay, well, we'll find out more information from RCO and then, well, hopefully. Either bring it back. This next meeting in a week. But we're not having a meeting on the 4th of July, right? So. So we would have to pretty much kind of decide. The next week or so what we're shooting for, because you guys won't meet until middle of July.
I think we could probably come up with a
Okay,
path forward in the next one for that. Yeah.
okay. Right. Okay. Now move on to the disc golf course unless there's any other questions or comments on that. So here's the disc golf course, and I know we've talked about this quite a bit, so so we're recommending moving forward with a SEPA review possibly for the disc golf course and the workout stations. And we recommend having that separate from the parking lot and the path. Just because if there's something that hangs one project up, it's gonna hang them all up. And at least to me, it seems like the moving forward, the disc golf course is probably a little easier at this point than the parking lot and the path down to the proposed boat launch. And I think because we have to work with Fish and Wildlife and Department of Ecology to kind of get some resolution on how we can build it. As you know, ecology says you can dig in, don't build up, and Fish and Wildlife says just the opposite. So we need to work with those agencies and get some kind of resolution there. And so in emails back and forth with the DAP, the Department of Archaeological and Historical Preservation, they would either like to see a cultural resource survey or somebody on site monitoring. And I would think that the monitoring would be the most cost effective. Have somebody on site because they're gonna dig 9 holes that are what about a foot in diameter and 2 feet deep. Rather than to do the survey, they're gonna dig holes, make a report, and then make recommendations. So they'd be on site anyway, so that would be my recommendation. But we also need to complete a SEPA review. But I'm not sure what funds are available in the city budget and how much the council wants to put forward towards this.
So when you had your meeting with these 3 different agencies, did that happen?
Yes, well, we met with Ecology online to discuss their take on some waterfront project, the parks projects.
Okay, so the thing about the monitoring, will Fish and Wildlife, can they schedule to send out their resources to do the monitoring if we don't need to study? Which is free to us instead of us incurring a fee. That might just take time to schedule. That's what we did with other stuff.
Okay, yeah, we can ask them about that. I can't guarantee that it would be at no cost.
And I guess that would probably determine how we move forward if there's a cost. Is that what you're thinking, Sarah?
maybe for this budgeted year, yeah.
Yeah,
That
okay.
has to be done. But if it just was a matter of taking time to schedule that resource,
Mhm.
then you could do the things because it's laid out. I mean, it's probably. I mean, it's already the middle of the summer. and It seems like this project probably won't move forward this year unless we had a bunch of money to throw at it. To do the cultural survey. Wasn't the cultural survey something like 25 grand?
No, $7,500,
Okay, so not so bad. So I don't know, maybe, I
but,
don't know.
but if we can get Fish and Wildlife to do the monitoring when somebody's digging the holes for the course, I think that would be acceptable to DAP. Because we have somebody there monitoring to see if we're running into any cultural resources. And that's essentially what they'd be doing when they do a test pit anyway. They dig a test pit and look for the cultural resources and then write a report on it.
We already have, they've already done that there. It's just a different location of the same spot.
They've done it out here at this.
They did for the kiosks.
Hmm.
It's noted in the kiosks. You have the report. It's the same. We waited a year to get it, but it's all noted in there. And that was the whole reason that the concrete had to be poured instead of going to the ground, but they found the resources. So if all you need was a sample. They dug up, we have pictures of them drilling in
Right.
there. They're all over social media.
Yeah,
Can we
but,
take credit for that? Did
Um,
cultural surveys expire?
I think so.
they don't, but if they're not specific to what you're doing, if those disc locations of the holes, if you will, the baskets, if those weren't specifically mentioned in it, it may not count.
They weren't, and you're right. Fish and What, the lady who wrote it said she thought we'd have to go back and do more, get more notations and wasn't really modified the report.
Okay. So I guess we'll try to get in touch with Fish and Wildlife to see if they can do the monitoring for the cultural resources. And I guess come back with that to you guys when we get it. And then there would be a SEPA review on that. I don't know if that's something that the city wants to pay for to do that review. Dollar wise, I know that's what you guys are thinking. How much would it cost?
Yep.
I'm thinking that might cost up to $3,000.
And there's really technically no other way to get around that, right? We have to go through.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's just something that we need to take a closer look at and see if we're able to scrounge up the couple bucks.
If we wanted to put something above ground that was removable, like half barrels that could be moved. So like a wine barrel, cut it in half,
Right.
dump some concrete in it, put your post in the ground, paint it. So it's sitting there on top of everything, it could still be moved later. Does that require a SEPA review? Does that require anything else, or that's just
No,
some posts?
Or does that affect
I wouldn't
The-
think it.
this thing?
I'm trying to think. I'm not real familiar with all the details of that because typically, you dig it, put it in the ground. And I think they have some that are removable, but you can lock them in.
Mhm. That's what they
Um,
have them in Finley.
and so I guess the disc in this case would just sit up a little bit higher. It wouldn't be buried in the ground.
It would be the same, you just take it like a plastic drum, use half of it, use the two halves for concrete on a vertical. That way there's no need to cold storage back to anything else,
Right.
sit on top of the ground. We have enough volunteer labor to do that.
Okay, yeah, I wouldn't see the need for a SEPA review on that, because we're just placing something on top of the ground.
So I guess I would get a good start if we can do that and see how active it, how many people actually use it and see if it's worth advancing to more in depth.
And
Okay.
what about the exercise equipment? That's gonna be on a slab or what? How is
It's
that gonna be
one
used?
pole that goes down 24 inches. Or 13 inches or something like that.
Was that covered in the kiosk report? Or- Okay,
Well, I think we ought to ask about all of it.
what's that?
I think we ought to ask them about all of it.
Yeah.
At the time we do go in there and not just do it piecemeal and have to come back later.
Well, and then does that go back to the other point? I know we're talking about when we talk about $7,500, just as an example of money that need to be spent to do one thing, is it? So they're writing this report, can they go to the second location, which is gonna be the new city park? And do the work there too, because we already have a design, so they're doing one report for $7,500 or $8,500, but it's incremental and then we're done
Right.
with it. Instead of all this, we want to do something that's good for the community, we want to do the right thing, but we don't ask the right questions or all the questions at the time. And then it's like 3 years later.
Right, I did ask about doing kind of a all-encompassing cultural report. But his comment was, well, if they're all in one report, if they're all kind of one project, so say like this, the path down to the non-motorized boat launch at the disc park, if that comes up with something, then you're putting the entire project at risk, putting everything at hold.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about.
Well, I know-
the exercise equipment and the disc golf, if we could do that.
Right. But Sarah brought up, what about doing this park, the riverfront park,
Yeah.
all
well,
of them
but-
together?
Yeah.
But
if you-
that's-
If you want to risk the time and.
Well, that's what he said. You put yourself at risk if something's found, it holds the whole project up. Well, we'll do some talking with the different agencies, Fish and Wildlife, about their cultural specialist. And also, I'll get together with George and we'll look at SEPA a little more and see what, if we can do. I don't think we would have to do it if we do the barrels and the baskets affixed in the bottom of the barrel. But we'll look at everything, more of a permanent, I guess, installation of the baskets and the exercise equipment, as well as the gravel parking lot and the non-motorized boat launch. And kind of come up with a game plan, how to move forward and what makes sense with if they're all going to be in one project or separate projects. So that seems like what everybody wants to do there.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. All right, so moving on. So we have the ARPA projects. I don't want to get into too many details with those unless there's specific questions, but the agreements for disbursement with the county are supposed to be on the agenda for the board tomorrow. So hopefully by tomorrow afternoon, we'll know that they've signed those agreements. Any questions on that? Okay, and next coming to page 11 is the pedestrian crossing project. So we are working, getting the agreements in place Since it's DOT funded, they require their agreement that goes between the city and the engineer. So we're working with them to get that done, and we're hoping to get it done this week, so we could have it in the next packet. Otherwise, it'll be July before we get those approved. And the one that we're concerned about, or most concerned, is the I'm backing up here, the pedestrian crossing, because in the pedestrian crossing, there's the carbon reduction funding that we received, and that 113,000 has to be spent this year. And so we want to get all the designs done and try to move forward with construction if possible. One way we might be able to spend that money is purchasing the flashing beacons, the flashing lights for the pedestrian crossing, to be able to purchase those ahead of time before construction. So we'll find a way to spend that money this year. So
Sounds good.
Thank you. I have a point of clarification. I thought part of the plan was we were gonna try to make sure we were able to get crosswalk installed at the boat launch.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, there's 6 locations.
Yep.
So we're designing, the boat launch is that first in Alma.
When do you
Okay.
think construction will start on that one?
Well, part of that's gonna be dependent on when we can get our agreement in place. Which I'm saying, we're hoping to get it done for next council meeting,
Got it.
because if not, then it pushes out to the second meeting in July. And so that's one of our first tasks. Once that's agreement is signed, then we'll start designing that right away. So I would hope if we get the agreement, it'll probably be about 2.5 to 3 months after we get the agreement signed that we get into construction.
Does that
That's
give us enough, so we're really close to not being able to do it this year because of DOT's guidelines, or do we know their date for when they're gonna make us not allow us to cut the road?
Well, with most of these, we're anticipating no cuts in the road.
Except the first one.
Well, I think we're gonna go back to that one and require a boring. So they'll just basically drill a hole underneath the road, so they're not cutting asphalt.
Are there steps for approval that we have to go through for that? It's kind of a change.
No, DOT, that's their preferred option, is the boring.
And will that allow us to draw more power down still? For all the electric?
Yes,
storage?
yeah.
Awesome.
So when we bore under there, that's what it'll be for, those conduits for the power.
Thank you.
Yep. And so that's the same with the Riverfront Park Trail project. Once we get that agreement, we'll start working on that, and that'll coincide with the whole design of the park.
So do you think this puts us in a place, Alan, where it sounds like we're gonna be able to obligate all the funds that we need to for 2023 without much risk?
Right.
And then there's some funds we can pull ahead early, but there's also potentially like new buckets of money. Right? That
With,
might be available to us if we have more projects through TAC.
um,
You feel like we have enough projects? We just gotta get stuff done.
yeah. Well, I don't
Some
know.
buckets of money, no one will get though if we don't do it.
Oh, I haven't heard there's some other money sitting there.
No, I don't know. I'm asking.
Oh, not that I'm aware of.
Just the
And-
one that's the tricky one that has to get spent this year.
Yes,
There could be another bucket of money like that.
possibly, but that would be for next year, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions on those? Let's see, one thing that I do want to kind of bring to everybody's attention is potential street projects at the bottom. We're looking at Edith Avenue, completing that area. There's Cleo Lane, Hope Lane, Carroll, east of Third, and Core Lane. And right now, we just have those listed as paving projects. There are other possibilities of doing like a double shot, OL double shot. That's similar to a chip seal, but you go in and you do a chip seal and you basically chip seal on it again, and you get a fairly decent surface. You probably end up with somewhere close to 1.5 inches of chip seal surfacing. But a lot of cities that we've worked with in the past have done that, even for kind of some of their more residential roads, and they've held up pretty well. The other one that I would like us to think about, I don't know if I even have it on the list, is Kendall Road. Paving and putting in sidewalks from the section of where Mountain View Estates was completed. Basically where the park is. And then from the park up to 13th. There's kind of a little gap in there. It's just kind of a gravel shoulder and whatnot. I know Benton REA is ready to put their power underground. They've already worked this last fall, they worked on a plan to do that. And as soon as we are ready to move forward with that, they'll put that power underground there. So, having them ready to move forward, I think is a pretty big deal. And if we can try to find some kind of funding for that, I think would benefit the city very well. And that, as I'm thinking about that, that's something that we could talk with TIB this fall about, or we're applying for this August, actually. Yes. Between Kitty and Jane. So Jenny brought up Kitty or 9th Street between Kitty and Jane. And that area is very narrow. I don't know if many people have been down there. Very narrow, probably almost be lucky if it's 12 feet wide in some areas. But I think that one would be hard to get funding for, I believe, from different agencies. That's something we can look at. But I know, I think it was Dave Sandretto that brought that up at the last meeting. And we are going to add that to the 6-year street project list. But there, I don't know any funding source at this point for that. And I think that would be, it's going to be a pretty sizable cost. Because there's going to be a fair amount of grading, because right now the road has got a pretty high point and then drops down to a low point and then comes back up. So we'd probably try to kind of level it off a little bit. So thanks, Jenny, for that. Okay, so that's all we have there on this. And now we're talking about going out to visit some project sites. And I wanted to just kind of go over those real quick before we head out there. This on the screen is the Dinah and Dale realignment. And right here you see the Dale Avenue intersection on 7th. And we're currently the access is through this area right here. I don't know if you can see my cursor moving.
Mhm.
That's the current paved path. And so we're doing the boundary line adjustment with the landowner. And so the city's property now will be in this area here. And this is how we're going to realign Dale Avenue. And we've talked in this area right in here, we need to get an easement from County Irrigation District, and they're all for it. We'll be working with them on that. And so the road will come down and make a turn and then go up to here. Before, we would have had to make a turn if you're going towards the park or the transfer station. This turn in here would have been a sharper left-hand turn and would have been a steep climb up the hill. And so now with this alignment, it's less of a turn and it's more of a gradual climb, as you'll see in the field. So we'll look at that in this area here, and we've staked it out so you can kind of see where the center line of the road is. So that will be our first stop. And then the next stop, we're going to go down to the wastewater treatment plant. And so right now, the city is divided up into 7 drainage basins in the sewer collection system. And the number 1 is a gravity system that goes all the way down to the treatment plant, this lift station 1. And the other areas, we have a basin number 2. It corresponds with lift station 2, and it pumps up to the treatment plant. And there's 3, 4, 5, and 6. They all have lift stations. And let's see. So 5, 6, and 7 currently all go into lift station 4, and then it's pumped into the treatment plant. And the next diagram, this is the wastewater treatment plant. And so this area right here, can everybody see that?
Huh.
This is the headworks. So the wastewater comes into here and goes through a fine screen, goes into a lift station in this area. And then from there, it's pumped up into this aeration basin. And currently the system only has 1 aeration basin. It's designed to have a secondary aeration basin. And that's so when the flows get over 500,000 gallons per day, we'll have a second aeration basin put in, and it can run in parallel or series, just depending on how the plant is reacting to the treatment. So it goes into the aeration basin, and then on the north side of it is a settling basin. So sludge settles out there. And then from here, the water goes through the UV building here. So the UV light is disinfection of the wastewater, treated wastewater. And from there, it goes from here out to the river. And during the 3 months, basically June, July, and August, it's actually the receiving waters, I guess, too warm for the water. And so the water is put into these infiltration basins here. So it just perks into the groundwater, and that's the way it's discharged. So we'll go down and we'll kind of drive in here and look at some of this area. But this lift station 1 is the one that needs to be relined. And we've talked about that before. Because the concrete is just falling apart just because of the corrosivity of the wastewater. And then here's the Riverfront Park. We actually staked out the corners of the parking lot. But the sagebrush is about 6 to 8 feet tall. So standing outside your car, we can't really see that much there. We tried to just stand up on top of the berm and take video of it. And that really didn't work out well, because if we focused in on something you want to see, you don't see the perspective of how everything kind of looks and works together out there. So I don't know if we want to spend the time to drive out there. It'd be basically driving out to the bridge, kind of looking at the bridge. But if people want to do that, we can still do that. But I guess whatever you guys want to do at this point. But
I mean, I don't feel it's something that we can't visually see because the sagebrush has gotten so big. I don't know if it will be beneficial for us to take a look at it until it starts to die down again.
right. And I think we were talking about, we know somebody with a drone, and we'll probably try to get up and have them take video, and that'll give us a better perspective of where things are at.
That sounds like a good
Yeah.
idea.
So at this point, I don't know if we all want to, I guess, get in cars and move to the Dinah Dale Avenue. And any special instructions for the meeting?
Council members can ride in the same car, even if you had a quorum, so long as you don't talk about city business. That sounds like a harsh thing. I'm talking about city business generally, because as long as you're not talking about city business and you're just visiting or talking about
Well,
whatever, you can. Life is okay.
All right.
Maybe we just adjourn this meeting and you can be back at a certain time. Zoom on their phone.
No,
As they go out there.
you're just
Just visiting.
So Dan, do we need to adjourn this meeting and
no, we're actually, we're just gonna move the meeting.
okay,
It's still gonna be part of the meeting.
okay. Okay,
And should we park up on Dinah, the existing Dinah?
yeah, we're gonna go through the gate and then about halfway down. Yeah.
About the recording? Yeah, you can stop the recording because there won't be anybody here to talk.
Resuming. We are back in City Hall now, resuming our meeting at this location. And I believe the first item that we are going to have is an executive session. And that will be, I forget the number, I didn't write it all down, 4230-110I. Potential litigation. So at this point, we will go into.
We need to identify how long.
I'm trying to find out. how
15 or
long.
20 minutes, I
15
think.
or
But you
20
could, I would say 15, maybe you could say 10, but I'm gonna say 15.
Okay, 15. We will return in 15 minutes, and I'll ask the people in the audience to please go in the other room, or are we going to go in the other room? However,
Well, there's less of us. Maybe we should go in the other room.
yeah.
Yeah, we can do
We'll
that.
go- Why don't you all stay and
Yeah, we'll go, in the-
wait,
and you
we'll
guys can
go
stay
in.
cool and we'll go in the other room.
Yeah.
So quick question, are we gonna be needed after this? I don't.
Hello, everyone. We're going to have to extend the executive session for another 10 minutes. We are now reconvening the city council meeting. Okay, our next item on the agenda is a discussion item of additional staff. I believe that we're going to need some additional staff. We seem to be having trouble keeping up as it is, and I'm very worried when this moratorium lifts that we're going to get inundated. And so I would like to see us fill a couple of positions. One of them is for Wade, a replacement for Wade.
A replacement or an
Uh,
addition?
Someone to help Wade. Replace him when he goes on vacation. And the other one I'd like you to consider is a foreman position. And I think Bill, you said you had looked at the payroll budget with them.
Yes, we are actually slightly under budget for this year. And with all the prorations for the remainder of the year, sorry, I took a picture of the.
Thank you.
I think this is a discussion with finance committee. We would finish the year at $927,018. $297,018.
That is salaries only or salaries and benefits?
Just salaries. Slight.
But isn't, I mean, the actual salaries were almost exactly the same, right? There's just a small difference.
Yeah, a lot of them were the.
So this, the whole 900,000 is not a surplus, is what you're saying. It's just that
Correct.
we're.
Okay,
We're-
thank you. I
Yes,
was like,
no.
no.
We're not that far in the budget, I don't believe.
This is
Yeah.
a very close estimate of where we will be December 31st. With all of our positions.
With all the current positions that we have now.
Current positions. The positions that we deleted, the new positions. Because we brought on planning, so on and so forth. So this was prorated. For just the years of the month that they will be working, not the entire year. So if we had an employee that made $70,000, but they, or $100,000, but they only work, say, 10 months of that year, obviously they would only be getting paid 82,000. So everything's been prorated down to the person. And thank you, Carla, for putting up with me when I hammered down on this.
So where we think we end for 2023 is where we thought we would end when we do planning, except that we actually have an additional headcount that wasn't planned for,
Correct.
that got approved. Okay. Thank you.
But please review that.
I added her.
Yes, we will have a planning
Yeah,
or a finance meeting to verify that.
so maybe to come back to your comments, Madam Mayor, on, I know there's been a lot of work done and I think we have fabulous staff. We have fabulous staff. We are having a lot of growth. And we've got to get the moratorium lifted. That's so important. We've got to do it. I think my personal view is if we think we can afford a foreman, I think we need to look harder at the budget and see if we can stretch to hire a city administrator to manage all the pieces, especially with the transitions that are going to be taking place in an election year. I think the incremental cost is not that much, and then they can decide what staff they need that's appropriate.
Well, I think that the incoming mayor should decide whether he wants a administrator or not. They may be full-time.
Or I think it's an agenda item as a council person that I'll ask my fellow council members to vote on though. Not tonight, but because that's not appropriate, because this is a discussion item. But that's something as we work on a transition, as council works on a transition plan that I'm going to be asking for. I just need to understand how to get on the agenda so that that can be a specific discussion and we can run the numbers around it.
Mhm.
And understand the job descriptions and the salary delta. Not just for the current year, but an annualized salary for both positions and what that looks like.
I think we desperately would need to have somebody to help cover for Wade. That would be priority. Especially with the union.
I agree, we need more.
We need more
Support.
people. We do. And I guess my preference would be to increase our maintenance staff. As opposed to bringing on an administrator now, that would be a big load on me trying to train someone.
Respectfully, we have some system issues that we're working on and other things going on. We don't have a clear view of our budget. I'm glad that we're talking about salary, but we can't push a button today and look at our 2023 budget. We can't. And so that would be part of the support. And reasoning that I have and rationale around why a full-time administrator is needed. So that a part-time mayor position can be well supported and we can get back to functioning like larger high-functioning cities where our council meetings, because the administration has full-time capacity. You do a great job, Madam Mayor. It's a lot, though. There's a lot going on, and admittedly, we have a lot of growth that's happening. And these meetings could look like an hour if we weren't in the details of some of the pieces. So that's my opinion. I think there's probably a lot of positions to solve for. I think we also need a leader, though, so we can do the work of council.
Okay. So the next item we have for discussion is the SCJ to $20,000 for transition. Who's going to be discussing them? I don't have anything, so. Okay,
I put together last council meeting, I put together an addendum, but I didn't know the dollar amounts on a monthly.
Brandon is probably still on. Maybe he can fill us in.
There he is.
Brandon, are you there?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Sorry, it's a late night. So I'll just kind of provide an overview from last council meeting and what I heard, and I just reviewed the meeting. I wasn't available. I had family in town, so I apologize for that. So this is the first amendment that we've proposed, and it's for 20,000, not to exceed. And what we did was apply it to the original contract. And so it would be applicable to all the existing tasks that exist. So there are like 6 of them that the city can like designate our time to work on, from comp plans to development review to council meetings. And so so what we proposed was an amendment, 20,000, not to exceed. As of last Tuesday night, our budget we had exceeded our budget by $5,237, give or take. So I mean, I think the city attorney and the treasurer spoke to, it was our second amendment, and we were over by like $33,000, and that's not accurate. And so I just want to make sure that's clear. And so how we propose to go forward is we've allocated Mike Manning's time to support Benton City on a estimated 6 hours a week for a 90-day period. And that would provide George a staff planner's support to help with administrative things, project applications, pre-application conferences, which seem to us to be the most important thing to cover while George, gets established and kind of gets his feet under him for managing Benton City. For myself, I would, follow George's direction of wherever he, whatever support he needed. And then I would have to maintain, about an hour a week, 30 minutes to an hour a week to just coordinate with Mike, review invoices, and then basically manage the contract. So that's what we had proposed. I understand the consideration you all are going through, especially with adding George as a planning director. That's a big position. And so yeah, that's where we're at. There was some other concern from council last week that there wasn't a lot of warning around where we were at with the budget. And, we had started in mid-April, kind of, we were about 15,000 below budget at that point, and had kind of made some effort to bring it to your attention, and so this is where we're at. I appreciate the consideration, and I think going forward, it's really kind of supporting George, which I think the mayor, Dan and George and Mike and I have kind of talked about a transition plan. And then it seems to me like it's an appropriate move where you all can have some time to kind of reevaluate our level of service and what you all need, and go from there.
If you could send us your proposal that we could look at and see, and see it, then we could probably address it next Tuesday.
I sent it back to you, or sent it to you in early May, Mayor Lehman. It's an amendment for 20,000. It's an amendment to the original contract.
Okay.
The original contract has like 6 scopes of work as task items that we bill against. And so we have proposed an amendment to those task items. So you should have it.
Okay, would you please send a copy of that to Carla?
Yeah,
Mayor,
I'm a little nervous about where we're at though. So just, I mean, we kind of had Mike hold off on any work this week. And so, we're over budget. And so I'm a little nervous about the timing, but that's fine. I'll send you the amendment. And then we'll go from there.
So Brandon, this is Sarah. I have a question about the math. So the contract's for 50,000. If I read back what I think I heard, in April, you gave a warning that you had 15,000 left and you were at 35,000. Is that what the billings show? That's correct? Did I get it right or did I hear it wrong?
I mean, back in April, I can't speak accurately of what that number was. I'll tell you what it is today.
Yeah, so then what I heard you say at the beginning of the session was you're at 55,000 as of last Tuesday. So what are you at today then? If it's not 55,000 and Mike isn't working this week.
Yeah, I mean, last Tuesday, well, on Wednesday, I spoke to George because I didn't attend the council meeting. I apologize. I had conflicts. So George had informed me that it was tabled, and so I met with Rachel and Mike and basically kind of held up any work or checked with George if there was anything critical that we needed to work on. And Mike has a regular cadence of working with Benton City on Fridays. He's originally from Tri-Cities, so that works out for him. And so we just kind of we told him to hold off on Friday. I don't think he's had any time incurred. I have, but I won't worry about that, of course. And so as of last Wednesday, we've kind of just paused. And so if nothing advanced today and the council did not approve a contract, then we would be $5,200 approximately negative on us, CJ. So. But there was a statement that we were like $33,000 over budget last week, and it's not accurate. And we'd been socializing where we're at, and it's not, it's the work's been right. There have been a lot of busy projects and activities and long range projects occurring, and so and then a little bit of a delay getting the public or planning director in-house and stuff. So that's just where we're at.
Mayor, I was just going to offer, I put together an addendum, and it was just an addendum that would attach to or be part of the contract setting. It didn't, I wasn't aware of any overages or anything. I didn't address that. I just added the $20,000 maximum for the addendum. And the one thing that I did need, I didn't have, was the hourly rate that is comprised of, and that could be different per person, or it could be $1 figure. That's the only thing that I needed from the document that I prepared. I can get that to you. I think
So
Carla
we
might.
need to let Brandon know that we're missing that to approve that.
Well, Brandon, can you hear me?
It may be in.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm just plugging in my.
Okay, the only thing that I needed from what I put together was I didn't know what, and this may make a difference on who does what work, but what the hourly rate is that the work is charged against, even though it has the ultimate up to 20,000. I needed a dollar figure for the hours, or multiple dollar figures for hours if it's different for different people, because that I didn't know. That wasn't included in whatever I received.
Yeah, so with our contracts for on-call services, we provide the standard contract language, the legal language for the contract requirements. And then we'll have a scope of work, and the scope of work identifies the task that the client's interested in us working on, supporting. And so for Benton City, that's moratorium, the sub-area plan, shoreline, floodplain, project review, administrative, city council meetings, planning commission. And so those are put in different task item buckets. And then the third piece of our contracts include a rate schedule that covers everyone from like a drafter to a principal of our office. And so the way we work through these on-calls is so our contact with the city, which would be George, which is what we've been discussing, I think May 19th. I think you were in the meeting, Dan. I think that's what we discuss is going forward is assigning Mike to consistent service with Benton City. And so he would be a staff planner level 1. And then you all would have visibility of like, okay, if George needs Mike to attend a pre-app and do a SEPA checklist, then, him and Mike would discuss the scope of work and what's needed at George's discretion of, what he's going to approve. And then, so that's the staff member, that's the rate we apply. Whereas for me, if I'm a project manager and I'm, maybe gonna be providing George with some guidance on a comprehensive plan update or arranging planning commission meetings, then he can plug in, my rate structure for whatever he needs. So bottom line, it's the rate structure that's in the current contract that was approved in January 23, Dan.
Okay, I'll reference that then.
Yeah. And thank you.
So Brandon, when you think about your time, just to message back what I wrote down in my notes, it sounds like one area that SCJ had been spending a lot of time was in pre-application meetings. And you got, yeah, so here's my question about that, because I think it kind of potentially changes the discussion. We just have too much to do. Do we have a plan that we can implement to charge those out in alignment with our fee schedule so that our expenses are covered? Because pre-application meetings, my read of the fee schedule, are supposed to be charged to the citizens or developers plus a 10% admin fee. That's
Right.
all of SCJ's time and the portion of city staff too. So if we were billing back for those things, we might be over budget for SCJ, but the net on the city's financials wouldn't look this way. I don't think I could be wrong, and I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't think we're quite in a place that we're ready to bill for those things, though.
Well, no, we can bill for them,
Yeah, yes.
but we're in the moratorium, so there's nothing
Nothing
to
to
bill for
bill.
at this point.
They're having meetings and they're using time. There's a project code that's assigned to
Right.
them.
And it's when permits are issued, and Jen can probably explain it better because she works in it all the time.
Mhm.
But there's billing within that permit code
So is the
that for different projects.
Is the-
They're working on them.
problem like our deposit or upfront fees or something else that we're not charging? Because we've been hearing for a while about the pre-application meetings and stuff like that. And the thing is, like, maybe as an example, I'm sure you're right, Carla. I know you're right. Even if the project doesn't ever get a permit issued, the city should never be out of pocket for that money based on my read of the fee schedule. We're supposed to be able to charge those things back.
Right. In which we can if they're, and I'm not sure where at in the process we are on the pre-con meetings. I know they've had them set up, getting ready for this moratorium to lift. So we can get permits issued and get things going and everything's built out from there. So
One problem that I know of is that the fee schedule keeps getting pushed back. I don't know why, but we need that new fee schedule so Jenny can bill.
We have an old fee schedule till the new one's
Right.
approved, though, that can be
Yes.
used, and
Yes.
we're not using that to bill.
But we should be. I'm surprised we haven't been.
We haven't ever been. So if there was a way, even if it was in Excel, that we were able to say, we were in a pre-application meeting and we passed on all of SCJ's charges, plus the 10% fee, plus George's time, plus Jenny's time, and whoever was in the meeting and touched it, that allocation, and we billed that, we could do that on a monthly basis. And then our discussion around how we're gonna pay the overage for SCJ, we should be incurring costs, in my opinion, for SCJ. I know we have to pay SCJ, but it's a pass-through if we're billing things back. And if the bulk of their time is on pre-planning meetings, I think that changes the tone of this discussion, but only if we're billing the citizens or developers who want to get ready for the moratorium to lift as we go.
Let me ask Jenny, are we or are we not charging them for these pre-cons?
As far as I know, we're not. We never have, as far as I know. And the fee schedule's been in place to this effect since 2020. No. There's different fee schedules attached to the permit. Yeah. But there's a lot of opportunity for lots of billing. So I think the staff, again, my position is I think the staff here does an excellent job, and I know everyone's working really, really, really hard. But I think that if we don't have a process in place before we lift the moratorium, and they may never get a permit, they still have to pay for SCJ plus all the staff time, the citizens and the developers. We can't pay for that. The city cannot pay for that and use taxpayer dollars
No, I.
if
I
the permit doesn't
agree.
get issued.
And it's something that we have to work
Yeah.
on. I'm putting out a lot of fires.
know. You're doing great. You're doing great. I know.
That's
You're
about all I
doing
can
great.
say,
Yeah,
and it's like, my head is starting to get above water where I can dig into other things. This is obviously one of them that I need to dig into
yeah,
and get it straightened out.
you're doing a great job. And again, I think the staff is all doing a really good job. It's not, we just have a lot of work to do. But I think the good news about this one is it sounds like there's a pretty good solution around it, because if we were able to bill out these things and recover the money before we have another meeting with these people, because that's our choice, even if the moratorium's lifted, because we have to be fiscally responsible with taxpayer dollars. We had a process around that would also probably control the flow of some of this stuff. Because I would imagine, Brandon, I'm gonna make this up. If we've got $20,000 in that bucket, then that from pre-application meetings before the 10%, and Jenny's sending them and everyone else, you solve a lot of problems. We don't have to have another meeting with these people if they haven't paid their bills, but we haven't billed them. And that can be, you bring your check and it clears the bank, and then we're having another meeting. That's just a process thing. That's not my decision, but that's a recommendation. And I think that solves the problems around these discussions.
So I might add, just because I feel it's really important, because when I had a discussion with George and the mayor and Dan about the amendment and how to apply it for service and support, you're kind of hitting the nail on the head. I mean, George is so new into his role that those are the rocks that he's going to turn over. Like, he's going to see efficiencies in administrative processes, queuing things in, counter receiving applications, chasing them through pre-application meetings, and then setting them up for, due process. And there's a lot of time that's involved in that, especially when you're trying to support citizens where there's a moratorium and the regs are ambiguous. And so we definitely incurred a lot more expense in that, to nobody's fault, because, Benton City didn't have some of these key staff positions. So now you do. George is going to do great. I do feel like he needs Mike's support. Mike was a planner in Pasco. He knows how to process. He knows SEPA. He's, he has great professional abilities with, clients and citizens and staff. And so that's kind of exactly where we're at. It's like, all right, well, let me fade into the shadows here and support George with whatever he needs. Keep Mike available. And then it's kind of two birds with one stone. I do feel like the fee schedule needs a hard look, because I feel like there's going to be a lot of focus in Benton City and a lot of draw on staff. And so you all need to be able to recoup those expenses. And I think there's an opportunity, some low hanging fruit there to get level set with the rest of the state. And then I guess final closing, like, I've had a great relationship or, introduction with George, and I feel like he and I can coordinate pretty well to where you don't incur a bunch of SCJ expense, but he can keep Mike available as needed. So.
I mean, again, I'm just going to state one more time. I think what's going to slow down your lift on the moratorium is stop letting these people take you in circles. They don't get another meeting until they paid their bill, and we'll bill them. They will show up with checks, the checks will clear, and they can have a meeting a week later after it's cleared our bank. That just buy you a whole bunch of time. We can't do it for free anymore. We can't be busier than ever and do it for free. We can't add more staff and do it for free. We can't.
Well, and I think we'd have to add that the refund, like, into the city fee schedule.
I think it's in the fee schedule, Jenny.
Excuse me, whoever's speaking needs to come to the mic.
Jenny, can you come up to the mic?
And if it's not, then yeah, we need to be looking at it if that's where we're using time, and maybe it's our deposit. I don't know what it is, and we can. I know we have more business to go through. I think before we talk about the fee schedule at the next meeting, it'd be great if the administration can take some time to take this offline and come up with a better solution than just wanting an amendment for $20,000, even though it's desperately needed, because there's some great ways that we have access to do something.
Perfect. Yeah, and the fee schedule for that for pre-con isn't in there. They're assimilating that with the actual application fees. So, you know, you have $1,000 deposit and then that's plus that, and those are all associated with the different application fees.
So we don't have somebody fill out an application and we do pre-con meetings with them? How do we know
Right.
how do we know what we're supposed to be meeting on if we don't have something in writing on what they want an application for? How
Right,
can we possibly do that?
Well, and that's where, you know, you could add into the fee schedule a pre-con application fee, where that would assimilate some of those charges. But as far as right now, that fee isn't in the schedule. But I'm guessing that that's when they actually, but they'd have to turn in an application after that in order to assimilate the fee, you know, for the pre-cons. So it's definitely something we need to look at for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe simplify. Maybe there's opportunities to simplify it, to make it easier.
Okay. So we will have this for Brandon at the next meeting, next Tuesday. Okay. So moving on now to items for approval. We have 2023-15, authorizing the mayor to sign Benton City agreement with Springbrook Express for financial software, services.
I motion to approve resolution 2315, authorizing the mayor to sign Benton City agreement with Springbrook Express for financial support services, software services, in the amount of $3,520.
Second,
All in favor?
Wadsworth, I.
read I.
Funk eye.
Alcazar, I.
Okay. Motion carries. All right, the next item is resolution 2023-16, resolution of the city of Benton City, Washington, authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement with iWord Systems for permit management and code enforcement software services.
Is this a renewal of an existing contract or a new contract?
No, this is new.
We had a presentation last week.
Thanks. I motion to approve resolution 2316. The resolution of the city of Benton City, Washington, authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement with iWord Systems, Inc. for permit management and code enforcement software services in the amount of $5,000.
I'll second that.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Wadsworth, I.
Read I.
Funk eye.
Alcazar, I.
Okay, and I believe we have a substitute ordinance for the next agenda.
It
item.
ordinance number 1057. It's a very slight modification of what you had received in your packets. And what I intended to do, and I promised you I would have at least a first iteration today. I took that first iteration and added a couple of things that needed to be changed because, for instance, some of the earlier provisions in the stuff that went to the Department of Commerce included provisions from chapter 2026 and 2027, which are chapters that no longer exist in our city code, which I took those out. And so I'm hoping that at least, unless you have questions or comments or suggestions, that what you have is at least something that in framework could be first reading and with whatever changes you come up with. Hopefully, we're ready to go so that this will lead directly to the modification of the moratorium so that the moratorium would only apply to the sub-area plans upon the adoption and effective date of the ordinance.
All right, so if we approve the first reading tonight, you can do the second reading on Tuesday and then the 5 days together.
5 days plus, whatever the publication date is, 5 days plus that.
All right. Application date, that's 5 days, so that will lift it still in June.
Right.
Discussion? Madam Mayor, may I have the floor?
Yes, you may.
At this point, are we letting you know the changes or questions? of the actual ordinance?
You certainly can.
Perfect. On 20.10.010. We have the residential development standard table. I'd like to go down to the R2 minimum side back setback. And we have 20 feet. I'm kind of questioning if that's going to be too much. The rationale is if we look at a lot of quarter acre city lots, housing lots, that would take 40 feet off of a 90-foot wide street face. And with all of our requirements for glazing and everything else on the front, are we going to have enough space to meet those requirements?
I thought the setback, was that the front? setback?
No, this is the side
Oh,
setback.
side.
So if we take a 90 by 120 lot and we immediately take away 40, 20 per side, that's going to be a 50-foot wide front. The average two-car garage is a 22 by 24 wide. So we have 50 feet minus 24, we're down to 26 feet per front of a house. And
So those were changed? I didn't know those setbacks were changed from what they're existing.
it was 10.
That's
I
what I
think
thought.
that, I think that, and I wish I had the copy that went to the Department of Commerce, but I think that might have been what went to the Department of Commerce, but if this is not something that you would want.
I think 20 is, it's creating a very narrow frontage of a house
Yeah.
on the street side, if that makes sense. Now typically it's 10 feet, which gives you 20 feet between structures, between neighbors. Now, I don't know if that 20-foot setback is the 10 on one side and 10 on the other, added together into 20 feet, or if it is 20 feet per side.
Well, this wasn't language I drafted, but I
Yeah.
could suggest that now is a good time to clarify that. If the intention was to say minimum side yard setback 10 feet per
side.
That would be a clarification that could be made.
Yeah,
May I suggest if we're going to do that for R2, would you also want to do that same thing for R3? And I don't want to get us into I'm not trying to say more than, more throwing that as a thought.
Yeah, as long
Yeah.
as this, as long as the distance between buildings in R3 is more than 10 feet.
Right.
That part. I
Well,
think
that's a
we
different-
changed. That's a different.
That's a different
section. Yeah,
section.
these setbacks.
so this is
I
actually
remember
on the
changing
property
those.
lines.
This is on the outside boundaries.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree with you, Bill.
so that'll give us still 20 feet between buildings, even though the property line is
Correct.
right down the middle.
Right.
Right.
So that number should
Should
drop
be
down to
changed.
10. And what that'll do is give 20 extra feet of street face of a residence.
R1, I mean, R2 and R3.
Correct.
Just because I have to ask this, because this does not say per side. Was that your intention on?
Mm. And that's how you get to 20.
10
Does
feet
it
per
fix it by
side.
saying minimum setback per side?
Per side, 10 feet.
Right.
Correct. I think we could just change the, well,
Or minimum
is
side?
it total or 20 feet on each side of the house?
What? I'm only asking the question. I'm not trying to direct what it needs to be. But I'm asking a different question than you might think, because if we say minimum front yard setback, that's no problem. Minimum rear yard setback, but if we say minimum side yard setback and you intend something different, then
Well, yeah.
we said per side, would you want that per all of them?
No, just that one, because we only have one front, we only have one rear, but we have two sides.
Yeah, so you.
For
could
all
have
of the
those-
sides?
For all the
Yes.
sides, yeah, I would,
Yes.
So
yeah, I would recommend that be 10 feet per side,
Per side, yes.
10 feet
Can put
minimum
that
per
in the
side.
table.
Does
Just
that,
so
does that make
time.
sense?
Yeah.
yes, I mean, if we're gonna do it one place, we want to make sure we're consistent.
Consistent with all. You good with that?
I'm good.
So it'll apply to AS
It's gonna make some
and
very
R
narrow
one,
houses with 20 feet
Yeah.
on each side.
minimum setback, 10 feet on each side
Yes.
for all.
No, I think I heard something different.
Yeah,
Oh, for our AS,
AS,
R1, R2,
Well,
R3.
maybe I didn't understand.
yes.
Is your intention to say 10 feet per side on AS, R1, R2, R3?
Yes,
But that's ag suburban, so it's bigger. ones.
that's correct.
So
So
you
let's
might wanna leave the
AS 20 on the ag suburban.
Okay, then what I would probably also suggest is that just to be consistent, we'll say per side on all of them, even though AS is 20.
Correct.
That would-
Yes, and to change R1, R2, R3
10 per side.
per side and then
AS will
AS
be 20 per side.
Correct. And that statement right there will keep us consistent also with national standards.
Okay,
The second item. If we move all the way forward to 20.51.030. About halfway through that paragraph. It says shall not be closer than a minimum of 10 feet from any other structure to allow for the passage of emergency vehicles.
which number was that again?
20.51.030 accessory building setbacks.
Page
Okay.
17.
I've got a different pagination for some reason. Okay, and
Tell me when you're.
I'm there.
Down towards the bottom of the page. Where the red is stricken, it says shall not exceed 15 feet in height. The next line, it says. Shall not be closer than a minimum of 10 feet from any other structure to allow for the passage of emergency vehicles. The 10 feet. Will not be. Lack of better terms, is not wide enough for an emergency vehicle.
What you recommend?
Well, I actually prefer that to be stricken. Because we will not drive fire engines off of the street.
Oh,
Fire engines stay on the street. It's the personnel and the hose. So the 10-foot dimension is fine. However, for the passage of emergency vehicles. I
well,
think
emergency vehicles might also include ambulances.
It's still. It's with eaves and overhangs and everything else. It's 10 feet's not enough. I kind of feel that for the passage of emergency vehicles is an unnecessary statement. It should be stricken.
Oh, just that language?
Yeah, just the part about being used for emergency vehicles.
Is striking to allow.
For the passage.
Correct.
Emergency vehicles.
We can leave in the minimum of 10 feet. I'm fine with
Mhm.
that, but
Okay,
for the reasoning for the passage of emergency vehicles, I think that needs to be stricken.
okay, and as you know, we're changing existing language, and that's.
Yes,
Good to change it when we have the opportunity.
but other than that, that's kind of all I really saw, to be honest.
You take comments today or normally?
Workshop usually.
I'm sorry.
You would like, are you taking comments today? In the workshop?
Well, today is not a regular meeting and no action will follow. But if you have comments,
I have.
Just the front setback, the garages you mentioned, the
Mhm.
22 foot. The guy with the crew cab.
Excuse me, would you please step to the mic?
Oh, okay. Yes, sorry. garage depths are normally 22 foot. A long box pickup crew cab is 250 inches long, almost 21 feet. If a guy parks that in his driveway, leaves 3 foot to walk in front of it, he's across the sidewalk with this setback. I would up the setback on the front to 25 feet, pretty much across the board.
Yeah, I thought my house had a 25-foot setback. So I guess that got changed. Too.
If he has a Class B motorhome or even a big van, he's still at that 22 foot plus range, 23 feet.
And you're dealing with
20,
10, 20, 20,
20, 10, 10,
20,
where it has the minimum front setback.
okay.
And I assume that it's from the edge of the sidewalk.
So make them all 25? Is that what you're
But
suggesting?
that's my suggestion, but it's not my decision,
Counsel?
just a suggestion.
I think it's a good suggestion
Yeah.
because there's a lot of these big trucks.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll end up with them parked across, a sidewalk and
And it's not safe for kids.
Yeah.
And it's in the table where it says minimum setback.
Okay,
Minimum front setback.
got it.
And I think if you make a change to 25 for all four down in 20.10.020A, you would need to change the second sentence from 20 to 25 feet also. I don't know, I think that's a good suggestion for some follow.
Okay, thank you.
So I had a question on the parking and I just need some help from space people. So under 2050.57.070 for churches, it says one space for every 4 seats or 8 feet of bench in a sanctuary. I think 8 feet of bench is like not like one bench. Is that how you think about that?
Where are you, Sarah?
On churches.
Page 19.
Page 19, the table for minimum required parking. Maybe one more page, there you go. So under churches, it says the minimum required parking is 1 space for every 4 seats or 8 feet of bench in a sanctuary. So I think 8 feet in a bench is like 1 bench maybe.
Yes.
Okay, so then if you think about a church that has, I need to do the quick math because I was thinking, can our parking lots accommodate this, right? So you've got 15 rows times 2, which is 30 rows. So you need 60 spaces to park at the offsite at the Methodist church. We don't have 60 spaces. That's just a comment. That's just some quick math if I'm doing it right. So we have at least 15 benches. So, but we have enough space for everybody at our church to park. We have more than enough space.
Yeah, and we have street parking.
But this
not-
is
that's
minimum
yeah,
required
that's-
parking though, but it says up above, Madam Mayor, that this needs to be off-street parking, not street parking. So that was
So this doesn't apply to existing buildings, right? This would be.
Right, this would be new building.
So don't worry about it.
Well,
Okay,
It would
don't worry
only
about it.
apply to new applications,
okay.
people that are already have their parking lot. We're not going to require them to go buy a new territory.
But I think that's interesting. That's an interesting way of describing it. Yeah.
Any other discussion?
Okay, hearing none, shall we entertain a motion for the first reading of ordinance 1051?
I motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 1057.
50.
An ordinance of the city of Benton City, Washington, creating and establishing a new section 20.09.015 of the Benton City Municipal Code BCMC, creating and establishing a new chapter 20.10 BCMC, amending chapters 20.15, 20.18, 20.21, and 20.24 of the Benton City Municipal Code and amending sections 20.51.030, 20.51.070, 20.57.070, and 20.60.110 BCMC relating to zoning and development standards.
May I suggest as amended?
As amended.
Comments today.
As amended with comments today.
Second,
All in favor?
Wadsworth, I.
Reed, aye.
Tongue, I. Alcazar, I.
Okay, motion carries.
And then this will be ready for you to second reading next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, correct. Okay. With that, I think we are ready for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Wadsworth, I.
Reed, aye.
Tongue, I. Alcazar, I.
Okay. Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.